Okay, everyone, I have another reaction video for you. This time, still on the same channel, Dialogue Works, but the guest is Alex Krainer. He's a regular guest of this channel, appearing almost pretty much every week. Now, he offers really good insights into geopolitics from Europe all the way to East Asia. Yeah, he's very knowledgeable on the current events that we're seeing, in West Asia, and of course the war in Ukraine. He seems to focus more on the Russia-Ukraine war. Yeah, that seems to be his main focus. So most of what he says I agree with. I'm not completely, this isn't like a personal attack. I'm not trying to be mean or anything. This is just my own views and my own criticisms of something that I think is worth pointing out. So the thing is, he's got this idea that within the American establishment, there's this internal struggle between the deep state or the globalists or the neocons, whatever you want to call them, and Trump, right? And the people that he surrounds himself with, which, I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, that's kind of a ridiculous position to take, especially now. 9 months after he's taken office, and still clinging on to this idea, this hope that he's somehow going to turn things around, and he has this plan, right? Just trust the plan. So he's very much a diehard Trump supporter. Although he's not American himself, I believe he's German, but of Croatian origin. And yeah, he's got this idea that there's Trump is leading the charge against the neocons, like what he was supposed to do, right? The platform he ran on, this anti-globalist platform that he was selling his position on. But the last 9 months have proved the complete opposite, right? And I think the signs were there, right? This is no surprise to me anyway, and I think to a lot of people, that Trump wasn't going to save the day. Nothing was going to change. He just picked up where Biden left off, and in fact, he made things worse. But anyway, let's get straight into it.
It seems that we're back to square one, and you look at the situation in Ukraine, in the Middle East. Nothing has changed. Steve Witkoff 2 days ago came out and said that we are trying to make a deal with Russia. We are optimistic about it. About Iran, we are trying to do something. In the Middle East, we are trying to break a deal, Abraham Accord. Do you feel is that affordable for the United States to make peace, in your opinion?
I do think so, Nima. And I think it's extremely difficult to judge what Trump has up his sleeve.
What Trump has up his sleeve. So you see what I mean? Straight away, he's going in with this notion that Trump has a plan. He's just in the process of outmaneuvering his opponents within the deep state, right? Within the American establishment. And we just gotta trust him, right? He's gonna pull something off. Let's just be patient. I know it doesn't look like it, but he will. Just trust us on this. So I mean, for me at this point, it's laughable. But anyway, let's get back into it.
Because his habitual modus operandi is obfuscation and deception, and for as long as I've paid attention to Trump, it's been that way. It's he's saying something and then he does something else. I recognize that at this moment in time, probably most people are profoundly disappointed in Trump, and that the feeling that he's betrayed his.
Oh yeah, you could say that. That's a slight understatement. I mean, what more evidence do you need, right? That Trump isn't to be trusted and isn't doing what he said he would.
Voters and the MAGA base is widespread, but I'm not convinced that this is this is the reality of things. That nothing is what it seems, and so I would be very careful about judging Trump, because it is very hard for me to believe that he would now suddenly, after all this time of having a certain position and certain mission with his presidency, that he would suddenly pivot back to being the global hegemon and the enforcer of the global empire.
Pivot back? What do you mean? Like, he was always in that position. That he was never not in that position. I don't understand where he's getting this idea from. I mean, Trump entered the White House as the as the president, of course, obviously. And his position was to do as he's told, right? We know that the president is just a script reader, right? He's an actor. To say that Trump is going, off, his original plan of action is ridiculous, because that's not the case at all. I mean, nothing has changed. It's actually got worse. He's increased. The situation in Palestine has got worse. He's increased the number of the involvement of American forces abroad, right? He's not retracting or reducing the America's involvement, right? He's making it worse. So it's not like, I mean, look, Trump maybe personally he wants to do all these things. He wants to bring, take America out of all these wars, right? Maybe on a personal level he wants to do that, but that's not relevant. What Trump wants personally is completely irrelevant. Okay? He has to do what his paymasters and blackmailers tell him to do, right? So Trump is bribed and blackmailed at the same time. So he's stuck literally between a rock and a hard place, okay? He has no choice but to do as he's told. So what he wants to do personally, I mean, maybe he does. Maybe Trump personally wants to end all these wars and bring America back to so-called isolationism, right? Where he takes care of America and America's immediate vicinity, right? Like a regional power, right? Rather than trying to be this global hegemon. But that doesn't matter what he wants, right? Trump's personal desires and whims are just not relevant whatsoever. The president does not have free reign to do what he wants, okay? The president is also captured. When a U.S. president takes office, probably the first thing that happens is they are brought to a room and they're made to watch the assassination of JFK, right? Without words, just watch this. To get the setting, to set the parameters so that he really knows what's expected of him, and if he doesn't toe the line, then, well, he knows what happens.
Buyer. I would be more open-minded with the idea that maybe, Trump being Trump, he's interested in replacing, putting the United States in the driver's seat of the global empire. Because, let's face it, it's been the British have been in the driver's seat. And now maybe he wants to take that position and impose himself as the dominant power in the world, and maybe dictate terms to Russia, China, Iran, India. And
see, I mean, this is completely ridiculous. What do you mean put America in the driver's seat as the top global hegemon? It already is the global hegemon. And this idea that the British are actually the ones in charge, that's ridiculous. That may have been the case 100 years ago, or even maybe 80 years ago, just at the conclusion of World War II. Yeah, maybe. But the U.S. replaced Britain as the driving force behind globalism, right? But Britain has its role, right? It's a junior partner. Look, there's no daylight between the U.S. and Britain, okay? And by extension, the EU, right? It's all one big blob, right? They all have their roles to play. The Britain's role is assassination, espionage, subversion, and intelligence, in color revolutions, and doing all kinds of behind the scenes activities and running propaganda. But in terms of brute force and power, no, Britain doesn't have that. I mean, Britain's a joke, and at that level is a joke at this point. And even so, you have the City of London, but the driving force is still the U.S. is the global hegemon, right? Decisions are made in the U.S., not in London. Like I said, London has its role, the UK has its role, but at the end of the day, it's not the British that are the driving force. They're not because he's got this idea that the US is trying to pull itself out from underneath the boot of the British Empire, which he thinks is still exists today, right? The British Empire it changed, it morphed into the American Empire. So the American establishment took over the British Empire. That's what happened after World War II. But his idea is that the Americans are trying to pull away from that, and they want to be part of the multipolar world order, which is completely ridiculous. I mean, the U.S. is the global hegemon. Why on earth would they give that up, right? Maybe Trump wants to on a personal level, but it doesn't matter what he wants. His desires are completely irrelevant, right? And yeah, so this idea that the British are they're the ones that are in control is nonsense. I mean, yeah, their elites are, like I said, they're all part of the same circle, right? And yes, the British elites are probably the most Russophobic there are, on the planet. That's just historical, right? But they're not a separate entity to the U.S. They're all one big. They're all part of the same empire. There's no daylight between them. You could argue that the EU, the Germans and the French primarily are a separate entity, and they are under the boot of the Anglo-American establishment. That you could say. But the current elites in Europe, I mean, they're enthusiastically part of it. It's not like they want to break away from it. The current elites, anyway. There are factions within Europe, I'm sure, that would want to break free of that, especially in France. No, to say that, that the British are dragging the Americans into wars and agendas that the U.S. doesn't want is completely ridiculous, right? The British are not dictating terms and actions to Washington, D.C. That's completely ludicrous.
So forth, or at the very least, approach all these negotiations and deals from the most powerful possible position. But the idea that he just went back to the same place where Joe Biden left off, that I don't believe.
Why not? That's exactly what he did. He did that and then doubled down. Joe Biden was so inept. I mean, not that he was really making any decisions, but no, that's exactly what he did. Trump has not made anything. He's not improved anything. He's made everything worse on all fronts. Right? He's done absolutely nothing for the American people, let alone to ameliorate America's position in the world. Right? He's just making enemies out of everyone. I mean, he's the circus ringmaster, as some people call him, which is very accurate to say. He's unhinged. Everything that he was accused of in 2016 is true now. I mean, I personally used to. I voted for him back in 2016 and 2020. I voted for him. I thought he was. He was different back then, and I personally believe 2016 he was not supposed to win. Right, that was a coronation of Hillary Clinton. She was supposed to win. He was only allowed to run because no one actually seriously believed he would win, but he did. So he was denied the presidency in 2020. We all know that was stolen, and in 2024, look how easily he got into the White House. Look how easily he won. There was no objections. There was no riots. There was no ballot harvesting. There was none of the shenanigans we saw in 2020, right? Why is that? Because he got bought and blackmailed. The establishment understood that he was popular and they needed to put him in the White House because they had no one else, and they thought, well, we just have to buy him. We have to co-opt him somehow. And I believe they did, because look at all those charges that were hanging over his head. They just magically disappeared, right? And then he was just walked into the White House, no problem whatsoever. And look what he's doing now. He's not the same. 2016 Trump is not the same, or even 2020 is not the same as 2024 Trump, right? And it's abundantly clear. I don't know how anyone cannot see it. I mean, name me one thing he's done. One thing that he's done that's been good for the United States, let alone the rest of the world, right? For the U.S. What has he done for the U.S.? Absolutely nothing. He's working for, you know who, right? The Chosenites. The chicken swingers. That's who Trump's working for. We all know that.
And so all this rhetoric might end up being what we got during his first term. When, remember, there was a war of words between him and Kim Jong-un. Mm-hmm. And there was a period of time where it seemed that the United States was going to go to war with North Korea, that they were going to bomb North Korea, but that didn't happen. Instead, at the very same time when he was engaged in that war of word, and it was usual Trump style, rash and vulgar and shooting nonsense of the hip through the social media. But at the same time, he sent a delegation of his representatives and military generals to South Korea and to China to prepare the ground to meet with Kim Jong-un. And then they held that meeting, and they had a good meeting, and they had a great relationship.
Yeah, again, I mean, this proves my point. 2016 Trump is completely different than Trump today. So he's trying to draw parallels to say, oh, well, look what Trump did in 2016, or in his first presidency, right? And he's right. He was more of a peacemaker back then. I mean, you could argue otherwise, but at least he was at least making efforts to draw back America's involvement in conflicts and wars, and he was trying to approach America's traditional enemies and make peace with them, like he did with North Korea, which was admirable. I mean, unless I'm missing something, but I remember that it seemed quite legit. He was the first president to go to the DMZ, and he shook hands with the North Korean president, which is quite incredible. And everyone was like, "Oh no!" All the Trump haters were trying to discredit him and say it was the South Koreans. They are the actual ones that were behind this move towards peace with the North, right? But yeah, no, that was a different president.
Relationship, and he was the first U.S. president to set foot into the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. And then, we had the beginnings of peace emerged between the two Koreas. They started demining the demarcation lines. And so, with respect to today's circumstances, I suspect that we are now in that period of the war of words. Trump just went to Scotland, to Britain, right, where he met with Ursula von der Leyen and he met with Keir Starmer. And I think that some of his statements were meant for that audience, to give his allies, quote unquote, the impression that he's still on board with them, that he still considers them important allies. Why is he doing that? I think not because he's interested in going to war against Iran or Russia or bringing the United States back into being the empire's enforcement force, but because I think,
again, what do you mean bringing the U.S.'s role as the enforcement arm back into that position? It was never taken away from that position. That's always been the U.S. position since the end of World War II, or since World War II, or maybe even World War I, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, I mean, when was the U.S. taken out of that position? When did Trump somehow sign America out of this position as global hegemon, and then he's now been forced back into it? No, the U.S. no empire will willfully give up its position as top dog, so to speak, right? And again, if Trump, maybe personally he wants to, maybe he understands that it's not sustainable, but he doesn't have a choice. He has to go with the script, and that's it. He's not going to be able to secretly outmaneuver his paymasters, right? They have too much dirt on him between Epstein and, of course, his funding. So he's in their pockets.
He wants to negotiate advantageous deals for the United States. He wants to sell them a lot of U.S. weapons, and so you're not going to do that if you give them a clear, definitive signal that you're abandoning them and that you're no longer their ally. Because then they're going to turn inward. They're going to be.
Yeah. Again, this idea that the Europeans are America's allies, right? Again, that's kind of a misleading statement, because America doesn't have allies. America has puppets, proxies, and client states, right? And Europe, the whole of the EU, is arguably America's biggest puppet state, right? With Germany as the primary vassal, right? So all EU countries are vassals of Germany, and Germany is a vassal of the United States, right? So all these countries are vassals of vassals. Britain is kind of like this weird kind of bridge between Europe and America. They have special privileges, they are under America's heel, of course. There's America's military presence in Britain, but Britain is not an occupied country, because Britain is willfully part of the establishment, right? The Anglo-American establishment, I refer it to as, or the Atlanticist power bloc. But Europe, especially Germany is occupied. I mean, there are more U.S. soldiers in Germany than the entire Middle East, right? It's been occupied since 1945. And yes, the current establishment in Germany is very, very much pro-Atlanticist. But as a country and everything below that, Germany is a hostage, and like I said, is occupied. So, and France is too, also to a degree. But France has been a conquered nation since the end of the Napoleonic era, right? So I mean, this is another subject I'll probably make some videos about. But yeah, no, France is a conquered state and is a reluctant ally of the Atlanticist power bloc. And Germany is also conquered, and yeah, I wouldn't even say a reluctant ally. I mean, they're not an ally. You know, they're like I said, they're a vassal, and they have to go along with whatever the U.S. says. They don't have a choice. So this idea that Trump's gonna, he needs to show that he's still that they're still allies, otherwise they're gonna, go their own way and do their own thing. No, they don't have that choice. They're shackled, right? They're tied to Washington. They do as they're told.
Be starting to develop their own.
So Trump, he's not going there to try and convince, oh, don't worry, we're still your friend. Please buy our weapons. No, he went there and he ordered them to buy weapons, saying, listen, NATO is now 5%. That's the cost of NATO. And you have to pay up, right? And you have to buy our weapons. And you're going to go and sell. You're going to give them to Ukraine and keep this war going.
Weapon systems, and they're no longer going to be as dependent on the United States as they are. At the moment, they still look at Trump as their daddy. They still want favors from him. They're still willing to twist themselves into a pretzels to get favor with Trump and with the United States. And so I think that he's exploiting this. And we've seen
to get favor. They don't have that choice to get favor. They do it, like I said, they do as they're told, right? They don't have to. They can't suck up to the United States. I mean, they can, but it's not in order to get favor. It's just because they have to, right? The United States is in the driver's seat here. They have no independent. They have no sovereignty whatsoever, right? They're just like little puppy lapdogs, just performing little tricks for them. Trump says, jump through this hoop. Oh, here's a doggy treat, right? He'll throw them a bone. That would be a more accurate description, right? He's just going there to play with his puppies, his dogs, and throw them a bone and make them do little tricks, and then he goes off and speaks to serious world players, right?
I think that he's been very effective at exploiting this in his meeting with Ursula von der Leyen, who accepted a total and complete humiliation at Trump's hands. And so I think this is the game he's playing. Apart from that, there's his position and his government's position has been consistent that the post-World War II global order is bad for the United States, that it's been weaponized against the United States, that the multipolar integrations are the new reality, and that the United States intends to embrace that new reality and work with other partners within a different...
Yeah, see here, this is completely ridiculous. So he's trying to sell us the idea that Trump wants to be part of the multipolar world and just be one of the nodes, right? As if he can do that, as if he's able to bring the United States out of its position as global hegemon and join the new multipolar world order. That's not possible. And I mean, yeah, he's probably right. The post World War II world order. What, it depends who you're talking about. If it's bad for the United States, no, it's not. It wasn't bad for the United States at all. It was actually very good for the United States. The problem is, in the last 20 to 30 years, all the wealth has been concentrated, right? Because the people at the top just got increasingly greedy. So it was good back when the United States was still an industrial power. It was only bad when it began deindustrializing. But it's still good for the very, very few at the top, right? That's why they're desperately trying to cling on to it. So yes, it's good for them. It's not good for the American people. That's true. The benefits of being the global hegemon for the American people ended several decades ago. But in terms of the people that actually hold real power, no, they don't want to let it go because it's too much to. For them, they see it as too much to lose. They don't want to let go of it, but they have this. They have a mission, and that's to control the whole world, right? Same as the British did. The British Empire, Britain wasn't able to do that. It wrecked itself in the process. But these elites, they jumped ship and went to the U.S. and they continued this agenda, right? And it's just the continuation of what the British started. But yeah, no, it's not good for the American people, right? So there's this rift between the American people and the elites.
Geopolitical framework. Now again, I have doubts whether Trump is even, mentally capable of just being one among the peers, or whether he needs to be the top guy. And so this is where I have a doubt. I don't have a doubt about whether he's just going back to where Barack Obama and Joe Biden and his their cabinets left off. I don't think that's the case.
I think the case of
I mean, what more evidence do you need, Alex? I mean, you don't think that's the case? He's done exactly that. He's just picked up where the previous administration left off. What has he done that's different? Show me one thing he's done that he's rolled back on or pulled America away from or changed from the previous administration. One thing. The answer is there's nothing. So I don't know where he's getting these ideas from, because they're just non-existent.
North Korea would be interesting to talk about, because we know that even with the case of North Korea, we see 1 step forward, 10 step backward. You know what I'm talking about? The same case is happening to Russia and Iran.
Yes.
The outcome, after all, is not something positive.
Well, during his first term, Trump was not very effective at all. And it's not just North Korea. We know from Douglas McGregor, who was personally involved with this, that Trump...
I mean, yeah, he wasn't that effective because he was being blocked at every turn. But he's even less effective now. I mean, completely ineffective is probably a better way of putting it. I mean, he's just following orders. That's what he's doing. He's pushing for the New World Order, right? He's doing everything that at the end of the day, he's doing everything that Israel is telling him to do. As far as West Asia is concerned, with other theaters of operation, then well, I mean, all he's done is he's just changed the approach. So for Russia and Ukraine, he's as Pete Hegseth put it, he's set in place a division of labor, right? He's telling the Europeans he's saying, you people, you need to pick up the slack. You handle this debacle in Ukraine, because we can't be everywhere at once. We have Iran to deal with. We have China to deal with, Venezuela. So that's what he's doing. All he's doing is he's still supplying weapons to Ukraine. That has not stopped at all. Okay, weapons flow to Ukraine has not stopped under Trump. So the only difference is now the Europeans are going to pay for it, and they're going to handle the logistics and everything else like that in order to continue the support for Ukraine, which is ridiculous, because the Americans are selling weapons that they don't have to the Europeans, who are supposed to pay for these weapons with money that they don't have, to then give the weapons to the Ukrainian army, to soldiers that they don't have, right? So non-existent weapons, non-existent money, non-existent armies. And yet they're supposed to defeat Russia somehow. I mean, it's ludicrous.
Had the intention of withdrawing U.S. troops from Afghanistan, that he wanted to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria, and ultimately even from Europe, and that he has been sabotaged on all those fronts. And then we also know that he has been belted with lawfare, with legal action, with impeachment proceedings, practically through his whole term. And here's where things get extremely interesting, because it was Russiagate, right? He has been dragged through impeachment proceedings over Russiagate. He was being accused of being Vladimir Putin's puppet. That his presidency was practically delegitimized by casting him as a...
Yeah, again, I mean, he's just going back to President Trump's first term. And it's not really relevant, because he's not, like I said, Trump is not the same now as he was then. He's been co-opted completely. Back then, he wasn't supposed to be president. That's the thing. So, yeah, Trump's personal views and desires, he may be correct. Alex might be correct in his assessments that Trump wants to do all these things on a personal level, but he can't do it. He's stuck. He's bound by his paymasters. That's it. So it's kind of irrelevant, because a U.S. president is not really, he's not the king, he's not the emperor. He's just a puppet at this point. He doesn't have any kind of sovereignty or ability to make his own decisions. He can't do it. Has the president ever been able to do that? Maybe several decades ago, but now, no.
As the Russian Manchurian candidate, and this weakened his presidency. It sabotaged his intention to improve the relations with Russia and roll back the United States imperial engagements around the world. And now we've seen just last month, this month actually, Tulsi Gabbard come out and disclose a whole bunch of really, really important documents regarding the Russiagate affair. And it is already inevitable, it's already discernible, but it's inevitable that the trail of investigations will lead to London. And this week, we already had the head of the Government Accountability Institute, Schweitzer, who said that the whole affair has been cooked up by British intelligence and by the CIA.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's like I said, Britain has its own role within the establishment, within the global empire. Britain's role is intelligence, espionage, assassination, color revolutions, soft power mostly.
A station in London, headed at the time by Gina Haspel, who was sent there by John Brennan. And so inevitably, the British hand in Russiagate will be uncovered and will be made public. And so this is extremely important because, you had this special relationship between Britain and the United States, which has been cultivated.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying this on the presupposition that the U.S. intelligence had nothing to do with it, right? I mean, again, there's no daylight between the CIA and MI6, right? British and American intelligence and Israeli intelligence, they're all more or less, they're all the same, right? They're just different departments, right? You got the London branch, the New York branch, and the Tel Aviv branch, but they're all the same. And to say that, oh, you see, it was British intelligence, therefore, Britain is trying to undermine America, and America wants to break free of the British Empire, and they want to join the new multipolar world order, and Trump's leading the charge, right? And it's just ridiculous. I wish that were the case. It would be nice if that happened, but it's not going to happen, right? Trump cannot single-handedly take down the American deep state. He's part of it. He joined the swamp. He might have wanted to. He might still. Maybe he does want to, but he can't, right? In 2016, he had the ability to, because they didn't really have him under control then. So that's why they had to beat him down and sabotage everything he was doing and spread propaganda and all the nonsense. And then in the end, they stole the election from him, right?
He's willing to help himself, to help his administration. With the Russiagate that you mentioned, you remember those days. He was involved in the case of Russiagate, and at the same time, he was putting a lot of sanctions and a lot of weapons to Ukraine. What I'm talking about, the outcome, how they can win, they can fight Donald Trump, how can somehow they manage Donald Trump in the United States and his presidency. It seems to me, I'm not talking about Donald Trump himself and the people who are close to him at the base of MAGA, what they're asking for. The problem is that they somehow, with the case of Epstein, you see, Epstein is becoming one of the biggest problem of the administration. Is becoming, and Donald Trump is not doing anything. It's somehow just making...
Yeah, Trump's not doing anything. He's even denying it, right? He's trying to ridicule people who bring this up as quote-unquote conspiracy theorists. So, yeah, I mean, but before, I believe Trump was, before he took office, he was trying to get the Epstein case exposed, I believe. I could be wrong. But now he's trying to brush it under the carpet, right? Because he knows he's implicated.
Things worse. He's not helping his administration. This is the problem. They're somehow getting somewhere to manage Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Someone is managing Trump, right? He's making things worse. So, yeah, Nima's raising some good points here. He's like, Alex, look, I know, you're on the hopium, right? You're taking the hopium, but let's come back to reality here. Trump isn't going to save the day, okay?
That's how things appear right now, Nima.
That's how things appear. That's how things are. I know it looks like that. I know it's kind of it seems that way, but trust me on this one. It's not quite as it is. There's just trust the plan, all right? Trump's got this, all right? He's got this.
Published an article today on my Substack about that, and one thing I noted about the Epstein affair is I actually never thought that the Epstein files would be made public. I did expect that they would, provide a few token heads to roll, some minor players, drag them through the mud, and pretend that, justice is being done. But I think that in this case, justice is illusory, and I'll explain why. But more importantly, Epstein spent his career developing this extensive network of very powerful people and putting together compromise against them. And so this is an extremely powerful weapon in the hands of anybody who's able to wield it. And now it's in Trump's hand, essentially. It's his administration that is now running the FBI and the CIA and the whole
No, it's the FBI and the CIA that are running his administration, not the other way around, right? This is another mistake he makes. I mean, I don't know if he understands how the power structure actually works, which is I mean, he should, because I've heard Alex say, explain about, the deep state and who actually holds the levers of power. He talks about the money lenders, right? I mean, he goes all the way back to, he even talks about Cecil Rhodes and Alfred Milner from, over 100 years ago. And the Round Table group, or the Milner group, or there are many names for it. But, yeah, so he should understand this. But, I don't know, he seems to, he makes contradictory statements. So, I don't know. But, yeah, that's why I'm making this commentary video.
17 or 18 intelligence agencies under Tulsi Gabbard, they have those files, they have those materials. And so that's extremely, extremely powerful as a weapon against your political opponents. And let's face it, the most important fight in the world today is the internal political struggle in the United States between, let's call it, the MAGA and the globalists, right?
Yeah, so here we go. So he thinks that there's this internal conflict within the American establishment, right? MAGA, led by Trump, versus the globalist deep state neocons, right? And that's just, it's ridiculous. There isn't. It's a fiction. That's what we were led to believe, right? And that's what the MAGA crowd still believe. They still think Trump is, although I think they're rapidly beginning to awaken to the fact that that's not the case. But yeah, I mean, Alex Krainer here still thinks that that's what's happening. So it's a myth. It's not. There is no internal struggle. It's they're all on board with this. Anyone who's not on board gets sidelined, fired, or assassinated, right?
The people who want the United States to return to its Republican roots and be an industrial powerhouse and be a sovereign country, versus those who want the United States to be the enforcement arm of the global, essentially British Empire. And so, to prevail...
The British Empire, seriously. I mean... honestly. No, I mean, look, the United States needs to... It's lost its... The reason the U.S. is weakened is because it's no longer an industrial powerhouse, right? It deindustrialized, it outsourced its industry primarily to China. And, going back to its Republican roots, we're talking over 100 years, right? This is pre-World War I. I guess you could say, World War I was America was briefly brought in to... yes, back then it was hoodwinked by the British Empire. They were dragged in, they were roped in by the British Empire in both wars, actually, World War I and World War II. But then at the conclusion of World War II, America was permanently brought in, but then took over, right? So, but not reluctantly, right? So the U.S. Emerged as the only unscathed belligerent of World War II, right? Britain was ruined, right? Economically, it was ruined. It also took heavy hits from bombardment. So Britain, it had to give up its empire. Same with France, of course. The Soviet Union was heavily damaged from fighting World War II, doing all the heavy lifting. But the U.S. was unscathed, right? They were untouched. And they emerged stronger, right? They had 4 years of fighting. Their industry was in a war footing, and was they were by far the largest industrial power in the world, unrivaled, and that's what put them into the position they were in. They were going to give that up. They didn't think, oh well, it would be nice. Let's go back to our Republican. They were like, the world was theirs, right? The world was America's at the end of World War II, and the American establishment was more than happy to assume that role, right, that they had inherited from the British. But the British never maintained control over America, right? That was the idea at the turn of the century, of the 19th century, just before a couple decades before, in the run up to World War I. That was the whole idea behind Cecil Rhodes and the Milner Group, was to rein in and bring the British Empire, to rein in what the British still had of their empire, right? but also to bring in the United States. They wanted to recolonize the U.S. and bring the U.S. back under its control. And instead, they put themselves under the U.S. empire. Ultimately, that's what happened. So, no, it's Britain is under the U.S. empire. Let's face it. Britain is not a powerhouse. Britain is not a world power. Britain is slipping into irrelevancy, right? Yes, they still have MI6 and they have assets, intelligence assets around the world, and they still have influence in that way. But they have no muscle, right? They have 8 warships. They have 60,000 combat personnel. That's it. That's not even a regional power, right? They might be able to defend their own island. I mean, that's questionable. I mean, what can you do with 8 warships and a few thousand soldiers? I mean, it's, plus a disarmed population. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I'm diverging here.
In that fight, you need all the help you can get. So releasing Epstein files to the public would render that weapon useless in that political fight. So this is the reason why I believe that the Epstein files, I always thought so, were not going to be released. Now, the way Trump and his administration have handled it has been really poor, from the public relations point of view. But
you think really poor, like everything else he's done?
All this happened strangely in the immediate aftermath of him getting his big beautiful bill passed, and that was extremely important because that solidifies his political background, his political base, meaning he's now more powerful and he's now more secure in wielding power in the United States than he was before the big beautiful bill. This is also the reason why he needed Lindsey Graham and why he put up with Graham's revolting antics. And so
the big beautiful bill makes Trump more powerful. I mean, come on, that was nothing but a PR stunt. It hasn't changed anything, right? His little trip to the Gulf oil regimes, where they just threw money at him, signed business partnership deals, as if there was no business between the U.S. and those. I mean, it was nothing. That's not going to change a thing. It was just a PR stunt.
With regard to Epstein files and the notion that they were going to lead to any kind of justice, I think that's illusory. That's an illusion, because whether we like it or not, in the West in general, not just the United States, we have a 2-tier justice system where
he's right about that.
The system's insiders are treated far, far more leniently than ordinary people. So if you're an insider, then you're very likely to get off free, no matter what crime you commit. So it's not very frequent that some big player, like a bank CEO or CFO, ever go to prison, regardless of what happens. Or some political insider, like Mike Pompeo or Barack Obama, or Jake Sullivan, people like this, Hillary Clinton, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney. They're not subject to justice in the same way as ordinary people are. And an ordinary person can get a stiff prison sentence even for minor offenses. And, with regards to Epstein files, we already had a case of Virginia Giuffre, I think was her last name, took Prince Andrew to court. And it never went to court. It was settled out of court. And so there was a payout. But, at the end of...
Yeah, okay, right. So we're talking about Epstein now, and sort of move away from this, move to...
On global geopolitics, on international relations, especially on the special relationship between Britain and the United States and Britain's standing in the world. Because, Britain doesn't have standing. Its standing was on the shoulders of the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
They have no military. They are economically and financially in an absolutely catastrophic state. And so they only get to play their role through proxies. And their most powerful proxy has been the United States.
No. Okay. So standing on the shoulder. So you're saying that only the United States props up Britain. Oh, but Britain controls the United States. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, he was right in saying that Britain has no real power, right? They don't have raw brute force. They can only operate through proxies. But the U.S. is not the proxy of the U.K. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And I think that Russiagate is going to prove kryptonite for that relationship. And I think that the Epstein file...
No, because he's operated on this notion that Russiagate is just a British endeavor, and it was only the British intelligence that were behind that. The American elites didn't know about it. They had no knowledge about and played no role in it, which is completely untrue, because they did.
Files are part of that because the Epstein files are going to force cooperation from many powerful people who are going to have to choose between freedom and cooperating versus remaining loyal to the globalist cause and then suffering the consequences in whatever way. And I think that even now we can observe this because there would be many clients of Jeffrey Epstein who should be screaming at the top of their lungs against Trump. Remember how it was in the first term. The whole media PR big tech complex was non-stop beating up on Trump, non-stop. Now they're very, very quiet, and I think there's a reason for that. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Epstein files aren't that reason.
Alex, Donald Trump, 2 days ago, we had Medvedev coming out and saying to Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump, it's not for you to decide, to dictate what we're going to do in Ukraine. And Donald Trump tweeted yesterday, he said that he called Medvedev the fake president of Russia. It's unbelievable. The guy he wants to fight each and everybody. And this is the problem, Alex. Don't you think this is a huge problem for the president of the United States to get into fight with Medvedev? He knows that, he says Medvedev is nobody in Russia, but he knows that Medvedev is the most important person after the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. He knows that what Medvedev said is the other part of the argument of Russian president. The Russian president, we know that Vladimir Putin is not interested in these sort of talks. But Medvedev knows how to put the policy of Russia in some sort of reaction or response to the United States in these tweets that he's doing. But considering Donald Trump getting into the fight and calling him personally, because Medvedev was talking about the case of Ukraine, he was not attacking Donald Trump, but Donald Trump coming out attacking him, attacking his personality, his presidency. This is something so unbelievable. This is how do you find? Don't you think that Donald Trump is somehow showing the deep state, I'm prepared to play your game. Come here. I'm prepared to do it for you.
That's exactly right, Nima. That is exactly right. And I think that this is exactly what it is. I think it's irrelevant, the trash talk you see between Medvedev and Trump and, whoever on these two sides. It's distraction, it's noise, it's exactly for the consumption of their domestic audiences. And I by domestic audiences, I don't mean the average voter, but exactly the deep state, the people who are cold warriors at heart, who want hostility, who like to hate on Russia, who practically made their self-identity as someone who fights communism, and they still think that Russia is communist. So when Trump does this, they think like, yes, look, Trump is finally being tough and showing them who's the boss and so on. It's all nonsense. I don't think anything is going to come out of this. I would give more importance to the recent statement by Nikolai Patrushev, who was asked recently about the provocations in the Baltic region. Because this NATO general, this absolute ridiculous failure of a NATO general, Donahue, was talking about, we can push the Russians out of Kaliningrad, we can take control of Kaliningrad easily, quickly. Donahue has already proven his ability to fail with these cockamamie military operations, which he had a chance to prove himself in Ukraine, and he caused a complete.
Yeah, that was a reckless statement. That was an absolutely reckless statement by the that American general. I wasn't sure if he was a general or what rank he was, but anyway, that was really, really dangerous to say that. Oh yeah, we can take Kaliningrad easily, and that's extremely reckless. But let's let's move past this part and see if we can find something else.
And what it is Trump. Taking advantage of politically expedient pretexts to do what he wanted to do anyway, and that is impose tariffs on foreign trade. And the reason he's doing that is not to punish China, to punish India, to punish Russia. He's doing that because he wants to create protective barriers for American manufacturers. He wants to. This is what he's been saying for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. To protect? No, he's not. He's ruining the economy. It doesn't work like that. Not to punish China, Russia, and India by putting these tariffs on? What are you talking about? Of course that's what it's for. But in doing so, it's backfiring. Because you can't, when you have supply chains and business that's so deeply integrated with these countries, and then you slap these ridiculous tariffs on them, you might as well, you're throwing a spanner in the works, right? It's so counterproductive. If you had your own manufacturing, if America was on par back when it had its own industrial base, right, when it was the number one industrial power in the world, then yes, putting tariffs would protect the economy. That's what Germany did actually back at the end of prior to World War I. They would put tariffs on on goods to protect their. It's a protectionist. It's protectionism, right? And it does make sense for the United States. The way things are now, it doesn't make sense, and it is to punish these countries. Of course, that's what it's for, right? So again, Alex is just kind of desperately clinging on to this idea that Trump is doing the right thing, and this is going to work, and it's for the American benefit, for the benefit of the American economy and the people, but it's a pipe dream. It's not.
Time. He wants to bring industry and manufacturing back to the United States. How do you do that? You impose tariffs against imported.
No, that's not how you do it. That's not. He's putting the cart before the horse. You have to incentivize businesses back in the United States and not punish, but you have to incentivize them by, with subsidies and interest-free loans and other financial incentives. You can't impose tariffs on foreign countries. That's not how it works, especially now, because they can trade elsewhere. They don't need the United States. The United States needs them, but they don't need the United States. That's where it's at. But Trump doesn't seem to understand it.
Goods. And so now, a lot of people are saying, oh, he's creating a disaster because the price for that won't be paid by China and India and so forth. Obviously, that's the case. The price will be paid by U.S. importers and by the U.S. consumer. Well, yes and no. The importer.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly right.
Trump already wants out of the equation because he wants manufacturers instead of importers as the foundation of his economy. And then the U.S. consumer will very quickly.
No, they can't compete. They can't. That's the problem. They can't compete with these foreign, with India and China. Foreign manufacturers are far more competitive than Americans. That's why they don't have industry anymore, right? So they're not just going to magically just start building factories and hiring a bunch of people, and no, because they don't have that. They need to rebuild it first, and then they can put tariffs on foreign countries.
Have the choice of buying U.S. manufactured goods rather than imported goods. Now, this is going to cause inflation. Yes, that's true, but you're going to have inflation anyway, and it's not like this system of open free trade is sustainable. It's not sustainable anyhow. So preserving this doesn't make sense. If it runs its course, it's going to collapse. And so you have the choice of, well, maybe we can push it over, collapse it deliberately, and create a level field for American manufacturers to compete. And so I think that, this is something that Trump has stated explicitly, that this is his intention. Only he's not doing it by saying we're closing the United States to free trade. He's using all these daily events in the geopolitical arena to give himself the pretext to do what he wants to do anyway.
I think the question would be, why would Europe go after a deal with the United States that would be disastrous for Europe? And this is the question that, in my opinion, when it comes to Donald Trump, he would be satisfied with the deal because he's going to receive whatever. I don't know if Europeans would afford that. Do they have the money to give it to Donald Trump? This is the problem. Something so amazing. The United States doesn't have the weapons to sell to Europe, and Europe is buying something from the United States that they don't have the money to pay the United States. It's something amazing the way that they're talking about it and the real outcome of.
Yeah. So Nima said it perfectly there. I mean, yeah, the U.S. doesn't have the weapons to sell, and the Europeans don't have the money to buy them, but they're still proceeding with it. They're still signing deals for fictional weapons with fictional money. It's ridiculous. It's so absurd, but that's where we are.
Of the deal. How can be, in my opinion, Alex, when I see the scene, when I see both sides, Europe cannot afford it. The United States cannot afford the weapons. They cannot send it to Europe. The only thing that I see the deep state is somehow managing Donald Trump just to let the time goes by and they continue the conflict in Ukraine. They know that in the next 3 years, Donald Trump, there would be no Donald Trump. We don't have Donald Trump in office in the United States.
Yeah, it's just a ploy to buy time. That's all they're doing. They're trying to extend this war against Russia through Ukraine for as long as possible, right? So they're literally just running on fumes now. They don't have any. They're completely emptied their stocks of weaponry, and they're talking about replenishing them. But that's going to take years, right? That'll take years. And Ukraine. I mean, this war's been dragging on for 3.5 years, and it's still going somehow. But it really is. It is coming to an end. I mean, it might last another year. 2 is pushing it. I'd be very, very surprised if it lasted much more than a year. But in the last 3 years, I've been surprised every year that the war is still going. I was convinced that it was going to be finished by the end of that current year, and that current year passed, and the war was going again, and here we are. In the fourth year of the war, really. We're actually in year 4, and no real end in sight. But it may just be a sudden collapse. That's probably what will happen. I mean, the actual losses are astronomical. They're officially as high as I remember hearing reports at the end of 2023. Less than 2 years into it, I was hearing reports that it was between 1 and 1.5 million dead. And now the official count is actually 1.7 million, right? Which is probably higher. It's probably over 2, maybe even 2.5 dead, right? That's not even counting injured. So there's no more. Ukraine is just depleting itself of people, right? They don't have the manpower. They're running out of soldiers.
It's all gone, and they can get somebody in the United States who's totally in line with them.
Yes, correct. And I think that the main outcome of the trade deal with Europe, to which Ursula von der Leyen committed, is to strip the European Union of legitimacy and to show that that the European Union is the European Union cannot provide advantage and protection to individual sovereign national European economies. That was the idea, to combine in a bloc. You are supposed to become stronger. You're supposed to have a bigger, more powerful negotiating position. And I think that Trump just demonstrated that this was all a children's tale. And he absolutely humiliated Ursula von der Leyen. I don't even know how he was able to pull this off. She agreed to something she cannot even deliver. You're right to point out they don't have the money to do this. This was absolutely staggering. I wonder how he coerced her to agree to $750 billion in energy resources over 3 years. This is several-fold what the EU is importing from the United States at the moment. What are they going to do with all this? And that's at very high prices, And then 600 billion euros worth of dollars worth of investments in the United States. Well, that already eats up,
Yeah, I mean, this is just ridiculous. This goes back to the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, and where he convinced the family dictatorships in the Gulf to invest hundreds of billions in the U.S. The same in Europe. It's just a PR stunt. That's all it is. Just to make himself look good. So, see, look, I secured all these trade agreements. I'm such a great, the art of the deal and all this. Treating politics as a business, which is not. It really isn't. I mean, yeah, there's business involved, but it's not at all a straightforward. It's not a real estate deal. So yeah.
Most of the the Rearm Europe program.
All right, let's see what else he has to say. What's over here?
It is true that the United States has a very powerful economic dynamism. There's a very strong entrepreneurial culture in the United States, and if you give them the even terrain to compete, they will probably be successful. But then you're going to need to trade with other countries again. Then you're going to have to, if you're going to be an exporter again of manufactured goods, you're still going to have to make nice with China and with India, with Iran and Russia and Europe. And so there's a there's a big chance of.
Yeah, but Trump doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to. The U.S. does not want partners, right? The U.S. wants vassals, proxies, and client regimes, right? They want everyone to submit to them. They want puppets. They don't want business partners, right? So on one hand, Trump's a businessman, but he doesn't want business partners. He wants people to do as he tells them. He wants to dictate terms that are favorable to him, and that's it. Or should I say to the U.S.? That's not a business deal. A business deal is where both parties benefit. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the incentive?
Unintended consequences in all this. And then, I don't want to absolve Trump from massive blunders that he has committed.
Massive blunders? Yeah, to put it lightly, Alex. Come on. That's what he's just been one big blunder this whole time.
In his political career, one of them was the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
One of them was the United States.
That was his first term when he did that. And that was a terrible, terrible blunder.
unilaterally walking out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, which is one of the worst blunders that any leader could have made, because those are exactly the most dangerous weapons to the world peace, and it removes certain.
We had INF Treaty as well, Alex.
Yeah, that's what I mean. INF, Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but I'm not convinced. I think that a lot of what Trump does amounts to deception, not deception of the Russians or Chinese, but deception of his allies and his deep state, which basically wants him.
No, Trump's not that smart. I mean, okay, Alex is giving Trump way too much credit. He's got far too much faith in Trump. He thinks Trump is playing this game of 5D chess, and he's outmaneuvering his opponents. I mean, it's really he's on the hopium. He's taken way too much hopium. So, but yeah, okay. Well, let's. I'm gonna move on to a short clip from another interview. This one here. So it's only a short. It's only about 2 minutes from another interview, also around a month ago. Okay, so this is Dmitry Orlov. He's another regular guest on Nemo's show, appearing almost every week as well. So he's one of the more regular ones, and he's Russian. I'm not sure where he lives, whether he lives in the U.S. or somewhere else in Europe. But again, he's very knowledgeable about his own country, about geopolitics in general, worldwide. Offers interesting viewpoints. I like listening to him. But there's just this one clip, this short section from this particular interview that drew my attention, and I felt like I needed to comment on it. So it's about the JQ, and let's get right into it.
You mentioned one of your articles is how to denazify Israel. Is that the problem? Is that the main problem with Israel and what's going on in the region?
Well, look, there isn't much of a problem with Jews around the world. Look at Iran, right? Iran is pretty much permanently at war with Israel, but there are Jews happily living within Iran. There are lots of synagogues. The Jews are represented in the parliament. They have a seat in the Iranian parliament. They're respected. The Judaism is regarded as extremely important to Islam. There's an understanding that there's a kind of a cross-fertilization that happened between various religious traditions, and so Jews are very much respected as part of the Persian civilization, and that is the case in a lot of other countries as well. And then you have Zionists, which are currently committing genocide in Gaza, and settlers who are destroying Palestinian homes and stealing their land. And this is an outrage, not just for everybody in the world, but for the Jews themselves. There are a lot of Jews around the world that absolutely detest Israel because it's not really a Jewish state, it's a kind of a Nazi state. Jewish-based Nazis, just like you had German-based Nazis or Spanish Nazis. So that is something that is an outrage to the world, Jews included, and eventually it's going to crash and burn because everybody knows that the only reason Israel can maintain itself is because of lots and lots of American money and support, and that is not going to run forever.
Okay, right, let's unpack that. The first thing he says is Jews are not a problem around the world, right? It's just the Zionists. So immediately he's trying to separate Zionism from Judaism, right? Or from Jewish identity. Does he not know his own history of his own country? I mean, were they who were the Bolsheviks? Were they Zionists? No, in fact they were anti-Zionist, right? But they were majority Jewish, right? I mean, even Putin says this. I mean, it's a fact. It's not even, the communists will try to deny this. They'll say, oh, no, it's not true. Oh, it's only a minority. No. It's a fact, okay? We can pretend like it wasn't, but that's just denying reality. So And then he points to Iran, saying, oh, look, there are many Jews in Iran. Oh, they're respected, blah, blah, blah. Judaism is seen as important to Islam. No, it's not. Okay? Judaism came after Christianity, and Judaism, it was always in opposition to both Christianity and later Islam, right? So he's defending the perpetrators, really. And he's trying to separate them from Zionism. What is Zionism? It's a Jewish state built for Jews only. It's a Jewish ethno-state, and the vast majority of Jews support it. And he's pointing at he's saying, oh, it's a global outrage, including for Jews as well. No, it's not. And the few that are against it are only against it because it's making them look bad. Right? Not because they care about the immorality of it. No, they don't care about the Palestinians. There might be one or two that do, but for the most part, the so-called Nature Carta and the Torah Jews and all these other Jews that say they're anti-Zionist, and they may well be, but they're not anti-Zionist for moral reasons. They're anti-Zionist because it makes Jews look bad, and because they think, well, we need to wait till our Messiah arrives. Then we can do genocide. Then we can steal the land, right? So it's just delaying the atrocities until later. So yeah, I mean, Dimitri, I don't know what his if this is what he actually believes, or if again he's doing what many do and just doing this for PR, right? But in any case, it's incorrect. It's dishonest. It's not true. Because there's only a small minority of Jews who are actually opposed to Zionism, and it's not even for the right reasons, right? They just don't like how it's making Jews look worldwide. So it's really intellectually dishonest, and I really despise these views, especially coming from a Russian. I mean, for goodness sake, Dmitry, learn your own history. You must know your own history. You're a smart guy. You know your own history. So stop running cover for these people that are committing atrocities, and that they're not normal people. Okay, they're not outraged like everyone else. Yeah, just because they exist in Iran and they have synagogues in Iran, they're not respected in the sense that you say. I mean, he's just, I don't know what to say about this anymore. It's historically that there's a reason for all their expulsions, for their bad reputation, and to lump them in when say, oh, it's Zionist, they're the problem, when the vast majority of them are Zionists. And Zionism is Jewish nationalism, right? And not just that, but it's Jewish apartheid, segregation of others, theft, and outright genocide, right? Ethnic cleansing. I mean, we all know what it is, but he's running cover for them. He's saying, oh no, it's just they're just Nazis, right? This whole Nazi nonsense. I mean, they're just like you had German Nazis, well, you got Jewish Nazis. They're called Zionists. No, it's totally ridiculous. You're not doing anyone any favors by doing this. You're literally running cover for the perpetrators, right? The Zionist Jews are more than happy for you to blame Nazis for this, right? Something that doesn't exist anymore, right? Not Nazism, so-called Nazism, expired 80 years ago. It doesn't exist anymore. There's no power structure in the world that is of that system. It's finished. So yeah, anyway, that's the video, guys. That's all I had to say about this. And yeah, leave your comments below, like and share, and subscribe. All right, till next time.